All right, folks, thank you so much for joining us today to our partner webinar event for creating a culture of mentorship across your institution. Before we get to the topic of our conversation today, I just want to share a few best practices to ensure your virtual experience is excellent. So, Anamik, thank you so much. Let's just move on to these tips. Here we go. So first, you might want to adjust your video layout to speaker view. We found that if your camera is on, it also allows for a much more engaging experience and allows us all to engage and interact with each other as we're going through the content. I'd also love for folks to take a second and share your name and institution in the chat so we can get to know each other. We have folks from all over the country here today, so I'd love for everyone to see where we're from. From California, North Carolina, Bucknell, Florida Atlantic. See some familiar names in the chat, so it's wonderful to see you. And welcome to folks that might be new, might be attending a partner event for the first time. All right, Anamika, if we could go to the next slide. Wonderful. So my name is Jen Caius. I am Mentor Collective's Customer Education Manager. I focus on listening to the challenges that our partners may face and providing educational opportunities to offer new creative solutions to make your mentorship initiative successful. Today's presentation is going to be provided by my colleague, Annemiek Rice, who will serve as your facilitator of today's event. And I'll hand it over to her to introduce herself, and she'll also introduce our guest speaker today, coming from Assumption University in Massachusetts. So Annemiek, thank you very much.
Great, Jen. Thanks for putting this together for us today. Jen has put a lot of work into organizing everything on behalf of our Mentor Collective partners and really appreciate that, Jen. My name is Annemiek. I'm the VP of Partner Success here at Mentor Collective. I have spent my career in higher education, starting as an academic advisor, and then becoming a kind of a consultant in student success and assessment and all things data. So I am a very impassioned data geek and very excited to help our partners help their students be successful. I am joined by a wonderful partner today. Chad is from Assumption University. We're going to get to know Chad and Assumption quite a bit more as we go further in our agenda, but I just want to say before I forget it, really appreciate, Chad, your partnership and your willingness to join us in conversation before and during today's webinar. So to get us started, just an overview of our session, we are going to talk about the research behind an institution-wide culture of mentorship. We're going to go through a framework of 6 elements that create that culture and talk about how these show up at our partner institutions and give you really specific examples of this. We're then going to dive into a conversation with our featured speaker today, Chad, who will share how Assumption demonstrates some of these really key elements. The goal of this webinar is to give you the education necessary to really drive the culture of mentorship forward of your institution in a very practical, manageable way. So in the chat, I would love for you to share, when you hear culture of mentorship, how would you define that? What does it mean to you? And as folks are sharing, whether you're a Mentor Collective staff member or partner on the call today, I want to talk a little bit about how this topic came to be and why we're spending time defining this today. So at Mentor Collective, we have been undergoing a data-driven analysis of our most successful partners. We've been looking at the folks who have the highest student opt-in rates, the fastest growth of their mentorship programs, the most engaged student participants, the best student success outcomes, essentially the institutions that have been the most successful in achieving their goals. And we are looking at what are the things that lead to that success. And something that comes up in conversation over and over again is they have a really great culture of mentorship. And yet that is this very amorphous, intangible concept. And so what does it mean to have a culture of mentorship? How can you get it if you don't already have it? And so what we're going to do today is really break this down. This is based on a landscape analysis, a peer literature review, an environmental scan for all of our partners, some data digging into different things, and lots of culling of resources from different case studies so that you can really be reflecting on these 6 elements and thinking about where you are and where you go toward building that culture of mentorship. So here is our 6 elements in that culture of mentorship, starting with strategic, so starting with the big picture. thinking through participant centricity, the visibility of the mentorship program, the resourcing of it, the way that data drives decisions and impact, and the celebration. Going to start off here thinking a little bit about strategy to start. So a strategic mentorship program means that mentorship is not sitting in a silo. It is connected to a broader student success strategy. When we look at the institutions who have the most success, mentorship is not sitting in a corner by itself. It is key and integrated into the work that is considered part of student success. And the goals are quite aligned when we think about that. It's usually quite easy to connect a mentorship initiative to a student success strategy and to consider mentorship as an integral part of achieving those goals. So to accomplish this, it's really helpful to know what are the specific goals of your mentorship program. Are you trying to drive help-seeking behavior? Are you looking at a sense of belonging? Are you trying to increase academic achievement? Really want to make sure you can clearly articulate those, that those words are in your mouth, that those words are on the page, that everyone understands that impact to create that natural connecting point with the goals of your institution. This means that as the leader of that strategy, if that's why you're here today, you really need to be quite well versed in student success outcomes. You need to be part of those conversations, fluent in that language, and educating yourself in those spaces. A student success leader, not just a mentorship, I shouldn't minimize it, not just a mentorship program leader. And so I want to point out that one of the key ways to do this is to make a very clear connection between the mentorship program and the broader student success strategy through something like mapping to a strategic plan. Here are two tangible examples that I pulled from past elements and the internet. So at Indiana University Bloomington, they recently presented on these different elements of the strategic plan, and they've really called out very clearly, here exactly is how our mentorship program aligns to that goal. These are the specific activities that matter. These are the metrics that would be impactful. And they had two different elements of the strategic plan, goal 1 and goal 3, where there was alignment. Similarly, you see here a progress report from Napa Valley College. They have a 5-year strategic plan, and they're in year 3 of it. So in that progress report on the web and circulated throughout their institution, you can see that implementing their peer coaching model is part of strategic goal number 2. So really just thinking, how can I map what I'm already doing to a framework that my institution is using? I know when I visited with Chad at Assumption, they had all of the strategic plan frameworks on the wall, and they were talking about it constantly, and that's really part of the vernacular. Another element of this is articulating those goals in a way that the people you're speaking to understand. And I'm going to let Dr. Frazier talk about this from UC Davis, about how they really clearly articulate how the student population themselves knows about the value add for them.
As I mentioned, we really try to emphasize the value and the culture of mentoring at UC Davis. That we want to ensure every one of our incoming students recognizes what mentorship is, that mentorship is not simply somebody who tells you what to do. Mentorship is someone who is helping listen to you, helping guide you, and present tools to you, and encouraging you to make some choices about how to leverage those tools, how to leverage the choices that are available to you. We also really work to emphasize that mentorship starts as an incoming student, that mentorship continues throughout your first year, that mentorship continues as you transition from being a mentee to being a mentor, and that mentorship continues when you engage with faculty, upper division students, graduate students, postdocs, research scientists at the university to get involved in mentored experiences with research, with internships, with practicums, and being able to translate what you learn in your classes into those mentored experiences and vice versa.
So I love also that Helen talks about the threading of mentorship throughout the student's experience, that it's really integrated. We're going to talk more about that.
As I mentioned, we really try to.
The next element that we're talking about for a culture of mentorship is participant centricity. As a mentor collective partner, you are well on your way to excelling in this particular area, because this is probably the area we have the most research and foundational program design to ensure that if you're running a mentor collective program, or if you're running a mentorship program with mentor collective, that you are able to do these things, that the mentorship is identity conscious and inclusive, that we're really thinking about the participant's experience here. that the program is accessible regardless of means and offers multiple methods of engaging, like text or in person or one-to-many or group events, so that participants with diverse needs are welcomed and accommodated within the mentorship program. That could also mean meeting students where they are in terms of your recruitment and publicizing of the event. Do students who are commuter students and largely like drive into your institution and don't live in the residence halls, are they aware of this opportunity? Are they encouraged to have this opportunity? And ensuring that those all participants are welcomed and included. Another element of participant centricity is it being goal oriented. So we want to have those broad outcomes that we know that the program is achieving or for our student body, but also reflecting that for each student, each participant, they are on their own journey. They are starting at one point, and that is different than the student next to them. So at Mentor Collective in the platform, we really start by saying, what is your goal for this mentorship? And then teaching that mentor to respect and encourage progress on that goal for that student at that time. So really reflecting on, as the person in this experience, you get to drive it. You get to ensure that it achieves and accomplishes what you want. And then finally, participant centricity also means mentors and mentees all benefit from the program. We're very well versed in seeing institutions that talk a lot about mentees and recruiting mentees and how they benefit, but a true culture of mentorship respects and appreciates the benefit to mentors as well, whether those mentors are alumni or current students or whatever their particular role may be. They benefit in terms of participation and engagement in their community, leadership skill development, and that should be part of how we talk about mentorship as well. I want to give an example here that, or of a couple minutes example here from Holyoke Community College, where they talk about really an identity conscious and inclusive program and how they reflected on, first we tried this way and it did not result in the identity conscious inclusive program we wanted. And here's how we adjusted to ensure that our mentorship program was meeting the students where they were and enrolling the students that we wanted to.
And still, we recognize that some students with more privilege come to us more than others who have been more disenfranchised. And so we have a recommendation form out there we send around to everyone, every program, every professor on the college. And guess how many students of color we get through that recommendation form? Almost zero. We get only white students being recommended to us because of everyone has an internal bias. And I cannot be running a program full of white mentors and student mentees of color. That doesn't serve anyone. And so it's really important to us that we are using data as an equity tool so that we are monitoring what populations are in our mentee pool. Do we have, how many students with disabilities do we have? How many students on Pell Grant do we have? How many students of color, Hispanic, Latina? And we're making sure that our mentor pool fits that population. So every semester when we go out to recruit, we see what populations do we need to fill first that we don't currently have on our mentor roster. There's not been one term here where we had to actively recruit white students, whether that was white students with disabilities, white students in LGBTQ. We know that those students are naturally coming to us and they're getting interviews and they're coming to us quick. And so it is my coach's job to reach out to student lists that aren't hearing about us, that aren't coming to us naturally, and say, hey, you qualify for this prestigious opportunity on campus, and we want to help you apply and get there.
So this is a great example of true participant centricity. And we're going to talk also later about the language and the branding and the terminology that Holyoke uses to make this feel like what it is, which is a high value experience for their students.
And
our next element is about visibility. And I think we've talked probably the most about this in our recent Mentor Collective education program. So I'm going to try and cover this at a high level. It needs to be this visible and integrated aspect of the student experience. Students need to know about the mentorship opportunities available to them, the many of them, if there are many. So integrating branding and your nomenclature and your culture into that so that it feels like part of your authentic insert institutional mascot or name experience. This could be simply about phrasing and logo and colors. It could be about the marketing materials, could be about the t-shirts that people wear when they're mentors. I just want to share briefly one of the many, many examples of branding. So Cal Poly Pomona, they call it Bronco Navigators. They don't call the mentorship program Bronco Navigators. They call the whole student experience in the beginning navigating being a Bronco, right? So that feels very much like part of the first year experience and not like a separate thing. Like getting a mentor is just one of the many things I get to do as a new student at Cal Poly Pomona. And it's part of being a Bronco. And there's lots of other great names and brands we've heard, but this is where I think confusing it into what you already have at your institution can be really helpful, which really goes back to the integration in the student experience. We're going to touch on this a lot with Chad at Assumption later, which is going into your orientation programs or your matriculation programs, or your other key transition points, not necessarily always thinking this is a separate initiative that needs its own events or its own elements. To really make it as visible as possible where students already are. The next element of visibility is putting this in the student voice as well. So thinking about students talking to other students or participants talking to other participants. This could be your alumni helping recruit other alumni mentors. It could be your student participants helping on other graduate students know why they should participate. But really thinking about that particular student voice. The most common thing that we see are these personal stories. So this is just 2 screenshots. We recommend this to all our institutions, but I want you all to click on this link from UC Davis Bio Lunch, because this story about this mentor-mentee pair and how they texted all summer and then they finally decided to meet in person and they sat and talked for 3 hours and now they're both fully engaged student leaders. This is really the color and commentary that helps with the visibility of the mentorship program as part of the overall UC Davis experience. And then similarly, Georgia Tech on their website, you can see this. Erica Mendez is talking about being a mentor and what it means to her to be part of the First Gen Jackets program. I want to share something we've seen a trend in lately. This is a snippet from a recent presentation that we've done about helping students tell the story to other students as leaders. And for that, I'm going to share a clip from Mark Myers, who's the director of New Student and Family Transitions at Augusta University. How do they connect with students in the student voice?
We're really fortunate to have a graduate assistant that she was able to kind of split her time between our orientation programs and our mentorship program. And integrating mentorship as in the form of the university. And so they have come up with lots of like very cute and clever marketing campaigns. I think right now they're doing like Instagram reels that they go to, and that we have our orientation leader, our student coordinators go out with like a mini mic series and ask people that are mentors and mentees what their experiences and why they should get involved. Something that I'm super excited about that I think is going through this week. We do have starting a JAGS for JAGS student organization as well, which will have a club structure to also help this really be driven by students for students. Because right now, the last year, I think I have a lot of really creative ideas, but when I've given them to my students, they're able to take them to the next level.
So again, going back to that participant-centric element, for students, by students, engaging the students in these decision makings about where this goes next. Mark is really getting a lot more out of, Augusta is getting a lot more out of this program by tapping into the students themselves.
We do.
And then finally, mentor recognition is one of those simple but very powerful things that an institution can do, is to appreciate and recognize the role that mentors play. And so when we think about that culture of mentorship, a culture of mentorship means that mentors feel valued, they feel seen, they feel important, they feel like their impact makes a difference. And there are many small ways one can do that: public appreciation and recognition, helping mentees write thank you notes to mentors, hosting recognition events or inviting mentors to student leadership ceremonies, inviting them to meet the dean or the VP for coffee on a regular basis, giving them pins or cords or other types of things. So here are 2 wonderful examples that were very easy for me to find because they were quite public, but the University of Delaware sends this, frankly, quite adorable little kit to their mentors, a pin of being a UDEL mentor, these little cookies that are branded, a handwritten thank you note. And you can see this mentor went to this is an alumni mentor went to their LinkedIn page to talk about how much that meant to them. And then also here you see the lead champion of mentorship at Baypath, Crystal Center Brown, gets her update email about what's going on in her mentorship program. She sees a mentor on that as an example, and she immediately goes to LinkedIn to say, thank you so much for everything that you do for our students. So this is really putting that recognition and celebration in the limelight. Of course, just having all of that can't be done on the backs of someone who's so passionate about student experience that they're doing it at night on their free unpaid time. Mentorship needs to be properly resourced at the institution and needs to go beyond a single person's passion to be a truly sustainable student success strategy. So the first thing we think about is, are the mentors properly resourced? Are they given the training and support that they need to be successful in their roles? It's a heavy weight to be the person who's there for the mentee during some of the toughest periods of their life, potentially, to hear the types of things that mentors hear from mentees and the types of challenges that they help those students work through. So again, as a Mentor Collective partner, you are well on your way to success here because you have validated and robust training. You have a flag system for asking for help. You have nudges about how students are doing, but it also helps. Our best institutions are reaching out personally to mentors to check in with them. They're leaving their doors open for them to come in and ask for help in how to manage situations. They're making sure that they're doing well in their courses, not just in their mentorship. And they're really providing that additional layer of support. We also want to make sure that all participants have access to the help they need when they need it. And this is less about creating some kind of new program or initiative within mentorship and more about, again, that connection of mentorship to the rest of the student success services available at your institution. So do your mentees and mentors have access to the tutoring center? Do they know that it exists? Can they get access to it quickly? If they need to talk to the dean of students really fast about a financial blocker, can they get in that emergency fund right away? And is the person working in the mentorship program able to make those connections really quickly for students, which all of you do such an amazing job with this every day. We see it all the time. So again, I think everyone's well on their way to being excellent in this particular arena. The next two areas really have to do with the institutional resources. So first, funding needs to be sustainable. A lot of you have to advocate for the funding, which certainly is expected all the time. We always need to prove our value and make sure that what we're investing in is important, but it's really important for funding to be something that people can rely on and know that investing in this is going to be a long-term success for my institution and not something that's going to be taken away suddenly. And then the other thing that's important is that key roles and resources are assigned. So again, we've done an analysis of the institutions with the most successful, impactful mentorship programs and looked at who are we talking to, who is engaged, what talent and skills do they have access to. And we have made this key roles persona dictionary that we're sharing with all of our institutions to say, if you want to be a superstar, this is who you need on your roster. You need the senior sponsor, you need the participant engagement expert, you need the data enthusiast. Sometimes some of you on the call fill more than one of these roles, but most of the time a single human cannot do all these things. So a single champion model is not a true culture of mentorship. You need lots of these folks and their talents and their ideas and their perspectives in the mix and helping tell the story and make an impact on mentorship. Great example of this at CUNY Lehman College. They have a key team of 5 people, which includes data analysts, director of advising, instructional support, the program manager, and they're really able to drive action throughout the institution. Next up is data-driven, and this has to do with the fact that mentorship data should be easily available, used, and shared at your institution. And I think we're probably all doing well in some of these areas and not as well in others. So for most of you, mentorship data is easily available because you have a mentorship platform, and a lot of folks who aren't working in the Mentor Collective don't have that benefit. But is it used and is it shared? Are you really using every data point you can to your advantage? And then are you sharing that with others who could benefit or understand that story? So where we see the culture of mentorship permeated is where you can see folks that are understanding what's happening in real time, that are making quick actions and changes based on things, that they are quickly responding to students of concern, quickly responding to early insights about low sense of belonging, but also strategically using data. So here's an example from the University of Arizona Online. Heidi Creel is a senior success coach here, and she talks about within the dashboard, mentors log conversations, right? We can all see how many students are talking to how many students, but you can also see the topic of conversations. So in their case, they can see the students are talking a lot more about academics in September. So we might want to host one of our tutoring center online workshops at that time. So really thinking about how can we use this data more strategically in addition to using it for early action. And then data-driven also has to do with storytelling. So I'm also not just going to simply say reporting here because I think we all know how to do basic reporting. But what we do see here is that storytelling really needs to be compelling and impactful, taking into mind who is the recipient of the story and how do I use a combination of numbers and also of the narrative, like those great mentor stories we just saw in those LinkedIn snippets, in the way that I get buy-in for other colleagues interested in understanding the student experience or participants who might want to be part of that. So here's an example, Florida Atlantic. I think someone is on the line from Florida Atlantic right now. Had a wonderful program. They had the data enthusiast in the room from the beginning. So they had someone who was looking at data and monitoring data and talking about data. They had all this data at their fingertips. This resulted in them being flagged for an Inside Higher Ed feature on the success of this program. And again, you can see lots of numbers on the screen, not just counting what was happening, but the connection between what was happening and student persistence and the growth of that program, which was important to them at the time. Growth was a key metric. This also then resulted in them getting a NASPA Excellence Award, which resulted in their president writing a press release about their NASPA Excellence Award, right? So this is the type of spiraling impact we can see when you start to just take the data that's sitting in your fingertips and start getting it out there and telling your own story. Finally, celebration, and I think that data helps us with a lot of these celebration, but it's certainly not the only example. It's one of the most important parts of the 6 essentials. I think it's really what creates that cultural element is the celebration around mentorship. It champions at all levels and across all silos at the institution, and that includes leadership that's engaged and informed. So this could mean senior leadership speaking at mentorship events, senior leaderships receiving materials or sending materials to different folks. I had the pleasure of chatting with one of our newer partners from Delta College at the Achieving the Dream conference. And everyone in their Achieving the Dream team knows about the value of mentorship and where it fits into the big picture. Their president talks about mentorship in the commencement speech. The VP of Workforce Development talks about it in the strategic plan. And on a day-to-day basis, everyone who's looking at those student stories can tell you examples of the students they've impacted and exactly how it happened. That's really a pervasive culture of celebrating mentorship. One of the things where we see this happen the most is when it's a cross-functional effort. So outside of a single silo or initiative. So at San Francisco State University, there is a centralized mentorship program with a very strong kind of administrator who is helping that a central way. And there's also academic leaders from every college that are part of that cross-functional team. That allows for that increased opportunity for engagement, increased opportunity for success and celebration. So how can you make this happen at your institutions? This, I think, really goes back to that strategic element of how is this integrated into everything that is happening at my institution, and how can I celebrate this at my own? So I'm going to share a couple more examples. I think we've shared a few others. This is from the UNC Greensboro. This is Regina McCoy, who's such a fantastic partner to us. Thank you, Regina, and her students. She writes this extremely compelling letter at the launch of the mentorship program, and I'll quote a few things from it. She starts by talking about the connection between sense of belonging and why this is part of in their case, QEP, Quality Enhancement Program. And then she quotes some data. Sense of belonging at our institution stands below the national average. This is exacerbated by the pandemic. This is why this mentoring program is not just beneficial, but essential. She goes on to talk about the value of it. But what she also says is, but for this program to reach its full potential, we need more than just plans. We need the wholehearted engagement of the community. And the rest of her letter talks about how she needs everyone at this institution to believe in and be engaged and participate in the program. Not just a single champion, though she certainly is a wonderful champion, but one who is really bringing in more and more people into that fold. Wonderful letter. Highly recommend you read it. And maybe, or ever hear Regina speak at any events in the future. I also want to point out the celebration that some of our administrators do of their own successes and in their shared spaces. So Dr. Nina Bennett, who is a wonderful, wonderful partner, she is doing amazing things at the 1890 Centers for Excellence. This is a group of HBCUs who cohort together, receive grants together within the areas of like colleges of agriculture. And she leads the mentoring experience across many institutions, 6 different institutions. And here she is, she brings everybody together. She hosts a panel on mentorship. She brings in experts from other places. She rewards and celebrates her colleagues. She uplifts the data and the impact of this. She does an excellent job of kind of the cultural elements of leadership here. And then similarly, Arizona Online, many of you do this, but this is just one example, presenting at a conference, being celebrated for that work, recognizing the high level impact of this. This can also go a long way for some of that sustainability. So those are our 6 elements of a culture of mentorship. And I want to say, as we go into our chat here for a moment, when you truly have a culture of something, it becomes this assumed thing. It's like always been there and people aren't quite sure what it looks like, right? It's this amorphous thing. It's so ingrained in the day-to-day. So we wanted to break down this assumption and this culture into these tangible things that eventually create that wonderful, ingrained and assumed culture of mentorship. So in chat, as we're entering our next stage for our thing, I would love to know which of those 6 elements are you thinking would be the most impactful for you to focus on at your institution? So maybe an area that's not yet a strength for you, or an area where you feel like that you have the most opportunity. Is it connecting to the strategy? Is it centering the participant? Is it making it more visible? Is it looking at your resourcing and thinking about engaging more folks? Is it using your data? Is it celebrating? Would love to hear of everything you heard today, what you have the most energy and interest in putting your attention to. And as you all celebrate, excuse me, I was reading the chat as I was talking, as you all share that, and please do, I would love to know, Jen and I will take this away to help us make some decisions about how we support you moving forward. I want to also steer our conversation to chatting with Chad. Chad is the Director of Student Success Pathways and International Student Advisor at Assumption University. I had the pleasure of meeting with Chad and his colleagues on campus last month, but they have been really showing up as a strong culture of mentorship for quite some time. And what we want to do today is talk a little bit about who Chad is, what Assumption is doing, and dig into a few of those elements that we've talked about, and open up the floor for questions so that those of you on the line could potentially ask questions of Chad as you will. So Chad, tell us a little bit about yourself before we jump into Assumption.
Yeah, thanks so much, Annemiek. It's good to be with everyone. As she said, I'm Chad Liberty. My role at Assumption is Director of International Students and Student Success Pathways. I've been at Assumption for 12 years. I was in Student Affairs for the first 9, and then made the transition over to Student Success not too long ago. And this was one of the initiatives that came to me, and thankfully. And so I kind of juggle 3 things at the university. About half of my job is working with our international students and being a good resource for them and all of their needs. I'm also the point person at the university when we get word through our own internal system that anybody maybe is not having the experience that they anticipated, feels like there's an area where we can improve. Maybe students thinking about transferring or withdrawing. I run point with those folks, and then of course I facilitate our AU Mentor Collective program. For those who don't know, Assumption University is a small private Catholic institution in Worcester, Mass. We're about 2,000 undergrads. I want to say maybe 600 grads. And we've been with MC for, I want to say 5 or 6 years. Had a lot of traction in the first 3. COVID happened, and so we've been working the last kind of 3 to really regain traction. And I will say, like, this has been an excellent webinar so far. I love what the other schools are doing. It is a little intimidating because I see that there's a lot of work to do on our front. I think we're doing a lot of things well, but there's a lot of things that we can improve on. So it's a little bit about me and Assumption.
Thank you, Chad. And I think this is the never-ending journey, right? It's like our own wellness journeys. This is just like with student success at your institution. There's always more to do. And I think that that perspective you have of like what we're doing is never enough is exactly what keeps you excelling and exceeding. So can you walk us through at a high level the program design and who you're engaging, who the
Yeah.
students are when you engage them?
Yeah, so we have this year we had 122 mentors for I want to say we're 491 first year students. And our mentors are they're not paid, they do it kind of because they remember what it was like to be new. And so it's very organic in that way. Yeah, I guess I'll kind of just leave it at that.
Great. And we're going to get into the details about how you engage those folks. So just a quick check based on the chat, we are definitely asking the right questions today because we're going to talk about visibility, celebration, and strategy, which were the top hits of where people wanted to focus. So just starting off, you demonstrate quite a few of these elements. I'd love to focus on strategy and visibility. So can you talk more about how this initiative is connected to your broader student success strategy?
Yeah, sure. So when I think about student success at Assumption, there's a few kind of themes, a few terms that come up, right? And so for us, it's personal and it's proactive, right? It's thoughtful and it's intentional. It's consistent and it's evolving. And so, Anami, to your point, for us, it's all about continuous improvement in all facets. And so like kind of big picture, that's kind of where we're at from a student success standpoint, where I see kind of mentorship fitting into that. And the role that it plays is huge on our campus because we're small, we're mostly residential. The community feel is a very important thing to us. And so I see sort of mentorship being instrumental, but also cyclical to help us kind of to get to where we want to get to from a student success standpoint. And so first and foremost, like huge props to all of the Assumption students that are part of our program. They do a great job, and honestly, without them, like this doesn't happen. And so mentors, mentees, like a huge prop to those folks. So when I think about the student success cycle, I'm thinking first and foremost, like students need to feel welcomed, they need to feel comfortable, and they need to feel supported at their institution, right? When students feel those things, if you can get to that point, right, you've got students who are more likely to succeed because they've got confidence in the institution, confidence in the community, they've got self-confidence, and I think those things are super, super important with today's students specifically. So that then creates this kind of, sense of belonging to their community, or at least you would hope that would. They have this recognition that, wait a second, so this is bigger than just me. This isn't just me being a first year student. This is like, I am a member of a community, and sure, there's a lot that I will be taught as a member of that community, but I have a responsibility to do the teaching as well. And so we're all teachers, we're all learners. And so we like to think that creates a sense of belonging to the community. When you're part of something bigger than yourself, you also, I hope, feel that you have the responsibility to engage and to give back. And so that is really sort of where Assumption, I think, does really well in that we do a really great job with, with kind of creating that cycle of we're here for you, you feel supported, now you're, successful, you recognize that you're part of a community. And so when I send communication out that, we're looking to recruit mentors for the class of 2028, there's an obligation for our mentees, which we get about 92 to 96% of our first year students, in the program as mentees. There's an obligation to pay it forward. And typically we do pretty well with recruiting mentors on that front.
As I mentioned, I got to go to Assumption, and I'm in this room that's in the center of the student success corridor, basically, and plastered across the walls are the three strategic plan elements, and everyone in the room can quickly say it's this and it's this, and that's where mentorship fits, and that's where we're trying to drive. So this like laser focus on the student experience. I also want to reflect something you shared about participant centricity here. Like it's about figuring out what students need in this current model of education and understanding them and being where they need us to be. When I visited you all in the institution, there were a lot of people in the room to talk about the Mentor Collective program. You were obviously the champion of it across your institution. Talk to us a little bit about kind of how mentorship is celebrated by leadership or cross-functionally at your institution, in terms of kind of that visibility there.
Sure. So, if there's any kind of silver lining to COVID, I can't speak for other institutions, but for Assumption, one of the things that did was we recognized very, very quickly that everybody being on the same page is really, really important. And that's on the administrative side, the faculty side. And so having been here for 12 years, I can confidently say now that we are more collaborative. We meet more often with town halls. And so buy-in, and cross-functionality has been pretty easy for us, if I'm being honest. I guess a prime example of kind of how we do that is with our mentor recruitment, right? So, I'm purposefully reaching out to, athletics. I'm reaching out to our Alana and first gen director. I'm reaching out to, student activities and leadership development, right? To make sure that, and we heard this earlier in one of the videos, the mentors that we have are appropriate to serve the population that we're bringing in. And part of that, again, another thing that was mentioned earlier is identifying, are there certain students that we know, may need a little bit of, specified support, right? And so if we can use that data, we can identify that, and we have the mentors, properly sourced to accommodate that, that's a recipe for success. Couple other pieces in terms of cross-functionality. One of the best things that I did with this program was halfway through my first year in, I recognized we need more student participation on the leadership level. And so I formed a student group. That's something that we've continued. And again, same thing, like we're trying to get appropriate representation of our student body on that student group. To kind of help us drive our program forward. As Anami said, we also have an administrative leadership group as well, which is cross-collaborative, which is very helpful. And I guess, I would go so far as to say at our institution, I don't know if you could say that there's too much mentorship, but we have a lot of different mentorship programs, which I think is good. But the challenge that we run into with having a lot of these programs that are very specified to assist students in certain ways, at times creates confusion among the student body where, well, wait a second. So I thought I already had a mentor. And it's like, well, you do, but that's a different mentor. And so I think, again, like us kind of taking a step back and looking at, while we mean well having all of these different mentorship opportunities, is there a way to be a little bit more connected, a little bit more intentional? And so getting back to my initial point about student success, right? And this is one of those things that we're kind of looking at and saying, okay, are we doing it the right way? Should we maybe tweak that? But needless to say, a lot of cross-functionality.
Yeah. And that's a constant conversation about probably not just the mentorship programs, but all of the things that you offer to students and the many opportunities they have. I also want to share something as we go into our conversations about visibility here is that it's very clear to Assumption that the mentor role is a core part of your mission and your brand as an institution. So you mentioned Pay It Forward. I heard your VP of Student Success talk about, like, we know what drives our students to participate in mentors. It's the servant leadership, it's the participation in the greater sense of whole, and that in of itself is part of the student experience here at Assumption. I'm sure they have more than one opportunity to perform or engage in the community that way at Assumption. It's not just mentorship that they're called to do. So let's get into visibility, because I think this is an area where We share your examples very often, Chad, and your outcomes very often. How do you get incoming students to know about mentorship right from the beginning of the student experience? You told us you have these amazing opt-in numbers for your mentees. Walk us through that.
Yeah, thanks. So I guess I would probably credit that to, in a previous role in student affairs, I was our director of student conduct. And so I would always trying to come up with like, how can we communicate policy to students in a way that will resonate? And so I always kind of subscribe to the mindset that the best way to communicate any messaging on any campus that I've been on anyway is from one student to another student. Sure, administrators and faculty and deans can get up and give presentations, and they can speak in students' language and try to kind of like meet students where they are. But ultimately, I don't feel like that typically will resonate as well as it does from one student to another student. And so I think that's a huge focus. One of the things that we do strategically is we don't wait until students are deposited to start talking about a community of mentorship. And so we do work with admissions to start highlighting that before students are even here. And just sort of, I think generically as a marketing piece, I think that's smart. If you have a mentorship program, I think you probably should be communicating that, at different open house events. And so that's kind of where it starts for us. Again, the student group that I put together has been very helpful in that way because most, families, most prospective students, like they want to hear from current students about their experience. And so we've been kind of strategic in that way. We're marketing this as, this is it's support, it's connection, it's guidance throughout your first year. And you don't have to wait until August to start. And so we, I would assume a lot of other institutions are, matching students in the middle of the summer with the mindset that we want them to start connecting, to get to know each other, and to provide assistance with all of the things that students need to do to onboard at the university. And really to kind of like set the framework for when they actually, physically get on campus, to make that connection. And so some of the ways that we communicate that, so we'll say, think of your mentor as a personal concierge, ready to listen, inspire, help navigate challenges, and recognize opportunities. And so really kind of like culminate, like from the very start, this person can tell you whether or not you need twin Excel sheets or just, regular twin sheets. All the way through to, hey, so, now we're getting towards the end of the year. Hopefully you're going to serve as a mentor for someone in the class of 2028. And so we highlight that we don't want to wait till fall to get to know our students. And I think that's a key. And I will say, I do sometimes get a little concerned that some students could be a little intimidated sometimes when they hear, I don't know if I'm ready to serve as a mentor, for the new students. And I'm always kind of quick to rephrase that, like your job over the summer is to get to know our new students and to welcome them again, like, building that confidence. But yes, we do expect that, after you do that, that student will go to you as a primary resource and you will serve as a meaningful mentor for them. We use phrasing like, who better to get you started on the right foot than someone who just did it? And again, the part of what we're really trying to emphasize is, full circle. This is a student leadership opportunity for you. We want you to pay it forward for the next class. I mentioned assistance with onboarding and our, really high opt-in rate for our first year students. We get that, one, because we're advertising it right away during admissions events. Two, we try to, as soon as a student is deposited, we try to get them access to their onboarding checklist, and we build that throughout the summer. And so right now, There's only 2 or 3 items on the checklist, but one of them is register to get your mentor. And so our mindset is that kind of gets them started. It gets them looking at the checklist of all the things that they need to be doing. And it's something to look forward to. And so on the retention front, it's helpful because it will help reduce melt over the summer as well, because you're engaging students, even prior to the summer. So that's one of the things that's on our onboarding checklist. I will, on a weekly basis, go into our NC dashboard. I will look at all of the students that have registered and completed a matching survey. I send that to our folks in admissions, and they then check that box for students on their onboarding checklist, so they know that is complete. Part of the reason why we do that is because we want to identify any outliers. So when our June orientation sessions come around, if there's somebody who hasn't completed that part of the onboarding checklist, we know that prior to them coming in, and we'll have a table set up for Mentor Collective, and we'll just highlight it as, hey, we noticed that you didn't register. It really is a valuable program. I know that right now it seems like, maybe you don't have a ton of questions, but you will, and you will really benefit from having a current student, to rely on, in addition to all the other resources. And so our opt-in rate is very high because of that practice.
And I think you've said it to us before. We don't say it's required, but we also don't say it's optional. Like, we kind of make this a default part of the Assumption experience. And that's the beauty of new students, is like the welcome week barbecue, everyone goes because they're kind of, just running with the default experience in the beginning. So
it is strategically placed at the top.
Yeah.
At the top of the checklist. Yeah.
Which is hard, because there are a lot of meaningful things you're doing to drive student success outcomes. Mentorship is one of them. So let's wrap up with our final question, but I want to make sure folks on the line, please chat in your questions, because we will save our last few minutes to ask Chad anything else that anyone has coming to mind. But Chad, just finish up by saying what else you do to make your program visible and engage your participant. There are a few other things that you're doing as the program is going on. And I'd love for you to just share some of that with us.
Yeah, so I definitely appreciate the comment that you made about it really does, it can't be one person that's doing everything. And I 1000% agree with that. However, I would say that whomever is your primary, really has to have ownership of this program. And in my opinion, should really be running point on communication efforts, recruiting efforts, and they should be doing that, again, in my opinion, in a very personalized fashion, to the extent that you're able to do that at your institution. And so I think folks all know about email merging, as opposed to the, dear student, that goes a long way. And so I do a lot of that. I am the face and the name of AU Mentor Collective. I do think that we have work to do in terms of visibility, but there's a lot of emphasis put on that. And so I'm the consistent connection with the mentors and mentees when I'm messaging mentors and mentees, and I try to be strategic. I try not to do it too much, but I'll send a message to mentors that's similar to what I sent to mentees, but also a little bit different. And so an example might be, if I'm sending something to mentors to help mentees with academic advising, or course registration, I would send something to the mentees that would say, hey, so here are the dates. By the way, don't forget, your mentor is a great resource. And so if you haven't already, it might be a good idea to reach out to your mentor. Or when we talk about wanting students to connect over the summer, I'm not just saying to the mentors, reach out to your mentees after you get matched. I'm saying to the mentees, the mentors want to hear from you. They didn't sign up to do this just to be able to add it to the resume. They really want to help you out. They're not getting paid. They want to hear from you. And so really, really, please reach out to your mentor. They want to hear from you. I'm the direct follow-up on all the flags. And so I'll see a flag come in, I'll reach out to the mentor and say, hey, thanks so much for all you're doing. I just want to let you know, I saw your flag. And, if you didn't mention this, maybe something to think about, let me know if you have any questions. Or sometimes I'll kind of help them triage whatever it might be. But the acknowledgement that, I appreciate what you're doing and it's not going to a black hole. Like even if they said it's non-actionable, we're following up on it in some way, shape, or form. We do the same with the MC assessments. And so we do sense of belonging and academic self-efficacy. I'm looking at those assessments when they get done, and I'm personally reaching out to any student that scored below average. I'm reaching out, I'm offering to meet. I want to get more information from them about what can we improve, what can we help you with. We've got a customized logo that's been helpful for visibility, and so we kind of blended the AU logo and the MC logo, and that student group has polos with the logo on it. I think, one of the things I've thought about is, do we do like handkerchiefs and have students put them on backpacks or put them on water bottles? Do we do stickers? Like, do we do things like that that signify to the class of 2028, hey, we got 135 mentors, and you're gonna have one, but you'll see the other ones because they're gonna have these items, right? And so we haven't done that yet, but that's one of the things I'm kind of thinking about. I guess just kind of to wrap up, like some of the things that at Assumption I wanna improve. I think celebrating mentors and mentees is huge, and I think we can do a better job of doing that. I think using certificates, highlighting a mentor mentee of the month. Those are things that can go a really long way, and I don't think we're doing enough of that, and so I want to do that. One of the things we're talking about with our 10-year strategic plan is potentially creating an experiential transcript. And so if that's something that we end up doing, this is certainly something that would lend to that, and we want to have that included. I think we need to have more videos, and part of that is training mentors and mentees about dashboard capability and kind of how to support. But quite frankly, I think the other part of it is just general kind of inspirational videos. I like to go on some of these Peloton rides, and I'll tell you, some of these instructors, like there's tidbits of things that they say, and I'm like, I got to write that down because it's inspirational, and I think we need to be doing more of that. And I guess last but not least, shout out to the gentleman from Augusta who did that. Website is great. The Jags for Jags, I love that. And so they're doing great things. I think, that's an area that we would strive to improve as well.
I love it. And thank you, Chad, for pointing that out, because I think all of you are doing great things, but also looking to learn from each other. So hopefully these types of forums are great for presenters and attendees alike. Jen, do we have any follow-up questions we need to ask to Chad?
Yeah, thank you. This was so great. We don't have any follow-up questions for Chad at this time, but I do want to point folks to some additional resources. So if we could just hop to that slide really quick. So we will be sending this deck and recording out. I had a few folks ask that, and not only will we send the deck and the recording out and some follow-up messaging, we'll also make sure to send some additional resources that were related to everything Chad had said and what you had shared earlier on Amik. So ideas for peer-to-peer recruitment, how to communicate in that student voice, example messaging templates. So Chad, where you had talked about the emails that you send for encouragement, some sample templates for you to use at your own institution, ways to integrate mentorship into your overall student success strategy. So some examples from our other partners. And then additional information on how to leverage orientation. So how to make sure that you're getting to students right from the beginning of their student success journey. As always, you can email us at partnersupport@mentorcollective.org for any additional questions. And if there are any questions that you have specific to Assumption, feel free to send those either to Partner Support or to myself as well. I'm Jennifer at mentorcollective.org, and I'd be happy to forward them your way, Chad, to answer them async. But thank you so much, everyone, for coming out. It was an incredible opportunity. I learned quite a bit. I wish I was a student at Assumption. And I hope everyone has a wonderful day.